Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. As always, I have a fantastic guest with me today. He's going to touch on some conversations that might be a little bit challenging, but very informative as well. His name is Dr. Keith McNally. He is an educator, a trainer, coach, creator, speaker, and organizer of the campaign and fundraiser called Trail to Transformation, Hiking for Hope and Healing, which is his way to make a big impact by engaging in a through hike of the Appalachian Trail to help people who are or have been impacted by suicide. Keith is the survivor of two suicide attempts, one in 2013 and another in 2021, and a major heart attack in 2022, who now connects with people all over the world to help them share their stories. He is also the author of the book titled Walking the Path, A Leader's Journey, which follows the path of a young man as he transforms himself into a leader. He is also the host of the Question Guy podcast, as well as Coach's Corner and the Envision Speaks series, as well as Your Suicide Stories and Conversations. Keith, I don't know when you sleep. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show. It is such an honor to talk to you and to have you here with me.
Sure, well, I appreciate it. I was kind of wondering the same thing. How do I do all that? And it's like, well, a couple of
Right?
things are already done. So the book's already done, published, and out. But the rest of it is as we go.
hmm And yeah, it's really funny when somebody reads your bio back to you, right? Because you're going, who is this person? Man, I'd really like to meet them. They sound so interesting.
Sometimes I hope I am interested. So there's a lot of things going on. And
hmm
so I don't know what we want to dive into first because there's probably a whole lot to talk about. And
hmm
definitely I want to give whoever's listening to this conversation some real impact because what I've gone through in life, especially most recently,
hmm
has changed it forevermore. And so
hmm
every day that I wake up with intentionality and purpose. And so I
hmm
want to make sure that your listeners recognize that about me, but
hmm
also about themselves, that if they're
hmm
not waking up with intentionality and purpose, uh, your life probably needs some help.
Okay, well, let's start there because when I look at you and I've talked to you a couple of times and connected with you online, and when I look at you, you seem so happy, you seem so vibrant, you seem like a guy who's got it all. So how does someone like that end up being suicidal?
Because it starts on the other side of that I've got it all part.
I see.
So when you're facing a situation that you don't have answers for, and
hmm
I've faced those situations in 2013 and in 2021. And to kind of give perspective to 2021, we all recognize that the world imploded in 2020. So COVID-19 hit. We were all in quarantine. And so some of that is kind of, part and parcel of the story. But afterwards, I was left unemployed for 12 months. And to put further injury to that, I am at the time 51 years old. And so a 51-year-old male who should be at the top of his game is now at the bottom of the barrel. And so having incurred a great deal of loss in so many different ways, one, especially me, feels devalued, not
hmm
important, because nobody's putting you up, nobody's hiring you. And so a lot of things were just kind of falling apart. And I didn't have the resources in many different ways. I didn't have the resources to address them.
hmm
What's left? Nothing. So why even live? So that was my second suicide attempt. And so
hmm
that's where things really begin to change because I'm sitting here, which means I failed. And now in the mental health community or the mental illness community or whatever community that you want to, be a part of, that's that's a sin to say that I failed at my suicide attempt. But I did. And maybe I did intentionally, maybe I did not intentionally, but the thing is I'm alive. And
Mm-hmm.
that first minute, that 5 minutes, that next hour, your energy is drained and you have to figure things out all over again. And that's really where my story changes. So my story changes at the point of what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the most difficult and most challenging aspect of somebody who's a survivor of suicide to face, because they've put so much energy and there was so much dark energy involved in thinking about planning it out, what to do, who to tell, who not to tell, when to tell what. It's exhausting.
Mm-hmm. So now you're on the other end of it. You come out of that, you have, I'm using air quotes, failed your suicide attempt.
Mhm.
How do you just kind of like reconcile all of this? How do you get your stuff together again after something like that?
I wish there was, that magic wand or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't. And so, but now I've got the story.
Mm-hmm.
And my story is this. My story is it's okay to be scared. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to say that you're scared. It's okay to say, I don't know what to do next. And it's okay to say, I don't want to live. Because when we recognize those real feelings, when we recognize those real thoughts, but the thing is, somebody who's leading up to that suicide attempt is not sharing that information, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is there's a whole lot of stigma to being a failure. We don't
Mm-hmm.
like, we live in America. I live in America. We don't like
Mm-hmm.
being failures, wherever we
Mm-hmm.
are in the world. We don't like being a failure. And so having lost a job, can't get a job, your money's depleting from your bank account. Easily I could have lost my house. The wife could have left. A lot of things, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
other variables could have been um, at play. I'm a Marine vet, so I'm a combat veteran.
Oh my
Not
gosh, I
part
didn't
of the
know that.
bio, so not really that important. But I say that to
It is
say,
important because
well,
I just wanted to thank you for your service.
I say that. Oh, I appreciate that. I say that to say that because I still owned the house, I wasn't able to apply and receive any kind of benefits because the
Oh.
house is an asset. And this is what I learned the hard way. Because it was still an asset and it's a pretty substantial asset, in order to have achieved any kind of resolution with not being able to pay the mortgage or whatever, sell the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put
Mm-hmm.
yourself on the street or put yourself in a rental or do whatever, sell the house and, you know, regrip on what you are financially. Well, even at that point, it sounds good, right? But okay, once you sell the house and you've got, X number of dollars in the bank again, if you're still not working, that those finances will be lost as well. And so it's a band-aid to a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger problem is I didn't have the resource to deal with it, but now I do, because what I started to do in life was start having conversations with people. And it's been through every conversation, and you talked about this in my bio. I have 5 different types of conversations with people. Some of them are specifically podcasts, and one is a really big podcast, the Envision Speakers Series. But the healing occurred through every conversation, because once I found I was not dead, I decided that that was what I was going to do. I was going to start reaching out to people who were on my LinkedIn, connection list, my network, and ask them if they would have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We were all in a mess anyway, so I was just part of the statistic, even though
Mm-hmm.
my situation was a bit probably different than other people, but everybody was hurting. And so I'm just going to be joining the mess of people that are hurt, and I'm going to find out what they're doing to survive it,
Mhm.
And that's what I did. That's what I started doing. And so those conversations became, well, first it was Level Up, and then it really, I rebranded to the Question Guy and the Question Guy podcast. And I did that because I'm a doctor and I'm a college professor by trade.
Mhm.
So there's lots of things going on here that are really bad, yet should and could be really good because what I do now is awesome. And so you
Mhm.
said that when you look at me, you think, well, this guy's got it all. Well, I don't have it all yet. I would love to have it all. Um, but the issue being is that I'm finding value in people,
Mhm.
and people are finding value in me, and we're sharing that value together with
Mhm.
every conversation. Now, the conversations that I had at the start um, weren't the best. But when I started connecting with people on LinkedIn and they were going through some really crazy stuff because COVID tore us all up. And I want you back into this conversation, but I got to share this with your audience. People were doing some really cool things with their life because they either lost a whole bunch of stuff
Mhm.
and needed to make a pivot, they needed to shift,
Mhm.
or they were facing themselves in the mirror every day because we were now in quarantine, and they may have acquired so many good, houses, cars, money. They had achieved the status that they wanted, but
Mhm.
you know what? Their life was empty. When they
Mhm.
looked at themselves in the mirror, they were empty. They didn't find any value in what they saw. And so whatever side of the coin that you were on, they all made changes.
Mhm.
They either made changes to survive, and so they
Mhm.
made the changes necessary to say, okay, these were my losses. I'll take them
Mhm.
as losses. I'm moving on. I'm changing my narrative.
Mhm.
Or I'm going to add real value to my life. So they left. They intentionally left what they were doing, whatever that was,
Mhm.
and found a way to put value back into their lives, even if that meant making less money, losing a house, or whatever that was.
Mhm.
So in this really short period of time from 20 to 21, I think the whole world changed, not just me. And we
Mhm.
were finding ways to find value in our lives. Oh,
Mhm.
I need you back in this conversation.
Well, and also to find connection, because I think that's the thing that was the most damaging to everybody was the loss of the human connection. Because we're people, we're social creatures. Sometimes yes, we do need our alone time, and that's okay. But we really need to be able to connect with each other and not necessarily through a screen. I mean, this is a wonderful way for us to be able to meet and to connect, through podcasting, but we still need that human connection. And I think
Mhm.
that that's was one of those things that actually stripped away our human dignity and was creating a society that was like clinically depressed pretty much almost all the time. We couldn't go to our gym, our church, our restaurants, our hangouts. This was just bizarre that they put police tape around the parking lot in one of our local parks. And it was like, seriously, you think I can't crawl under that? And of course, we have a big yard and there's a local park right down the street from us. You can't tape that off. There's no way you can do it, all kind of walking trails. So I think that that's something that put an incredible long-lasting impact on our society. On the flip side, it opened up a lot more channels. For example, because now we're doing podcasts remotely. I never did that until the pandemic. And it was like, I want to keep my show going. So I had to learn an incredible amount of technology. And as a baby boomer, I don't like that. But you had to figure it out and make it work. So I think you're right. There's two sides of the coin. Some people actually sludged through and thrived, and other people, it was just overwhelming. And when you lose your community, when you lose that human connection, I think that's when we really go down a very, very dark path.
And it's true. And the darker that path becomes, the more desperate you are. And
Mhm.
for me, again, and just to kind of put some context to this, I don't have a mental illness. I don't have a diagnosis. The only
Mhm.
diagnosis I have, I'm an asthmatic, and I've been an asthmatic at birth. So I do have a medical diagnosis, but I'm
Mhm.
not clinically depressed. I don't have anxiety. I don't have all of these things. My life imploded. basically.
Yeah.
When you're unemployed for 12 months, you know, life implodes. So what do you do?
Mhm.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't
Mhm.
I didn't know why I couldn't find a job. It was
Mhm.
like hope and a prayer. And then there's, 1,000 coaches out there on LinkedIn. Oh, I could revamp your resume, right? For how much money? How much money are you gonna I don't have that kind of, spendable cash. I'm literally trying to pay the bills I
Mhm.
can't pay.
Mhm. Right.
And it's none of it's working. And so really it was a wing on a prayer that I did get a job,
Mhm.
mid-year 2022, which was really good and very, very needed because and
Mhm.
that was kind of my last straw.
Mhm.
I said to myself, if I'm not employed, basically, if I'm not starting a job by January, by June 1st, 2022, I've got to sell. I've, got to cut my losses and move on with life, whatever that meant. And that was kind of for me not necessarily the peace, but the calmness that you
Mhm.
kind of do mentally that says, okay, you know, my way isn't working. All the
Mhm.
things that I'm desperately trying to grasp onto and hold on to, they're still slipping away. And so I just resolved to the fact, and that's kind of one of the words I use for kind of every year since is resolve to the fact that this is the situation. What are you going to do with it?
Mhm.
What is the best choice to make given the circumstances? And so for me, it was okay, let it go.
Mhm.
And when I chose to let it go,
Mhm.
things started coming in. And I'm not a spiritual person in regards to, I know people really, the law of attraction and all that kind of stuff that's out there. I'm very practical in my application to life. Things are real to me or they're not real.
Mhm.
But there's a deeper resolution to the idea that, in some sense, I guess I kind of can influence how I approach a situation. I may not be able to
Mhm.
influence what comes into my situation, but my
Mhm.
approach to my situation, how I feel, what I think, and what I do, are all within my control. So
Mhm.
being at peace to the fact that, okay, with my family, we're gonna have to make some changes. And that may mean losing the house. And once that happened, there's no magic here, but I did get a job. Like I said, I did get it. And then I started having real conversations. And so those conversations are really where the power was. And so this
Mhm.
conversation and every conversation that preceded this one was part of how I grew as a person.
Mhm.
They were part of my healing. They were part of my transformation. They were part of the empowerment that I have now because I don't do anything alone.
Mhm.
I have peace. I have
Mhm.
joy. I have friends. I have colleagues. I have projects. I have business projects. And most importantly, I get to share other people's stories. Like yourself, you were on my show,
Mhm.
which is really cool. I get to share people's stories through 5 different conversations because
Mhm.
there's a different story. There's people's personal story, their professional story, their social impact. More and more people are admitting that fact that they've had been impacted by suicide. And so I'm meeting
Mhm.
those people, not just, having thoughts of it, but other people in their family, neighborhood, community, church, whatever. And then, like you said, that fifth playlist on my YouTube channel is about conversations. It's about people
Mhm.
who are willing to strip away, the title and whoever we are, whoever
Mhm.
that facade that we put in front of us, and just be
Mhm.
people. Kind of like this conversation. We're just two people really figuring each other out, finding
Mhm.
out what makes us tick.
I think there are a lot more people than we realize who have been impacted by suicide. I
Yeah,
think if you would just ask random people on the street, everybody knows somebody, at least one person,
yeah.
who's either been suicidal or actually completed the act. It's really almost like the new pandemic because there is so much, and that does, I think, stem from being locked up, from being told what we could and could not do, that somebody else had control over our lives. And I think that's the one thing we really want as human beings. not only the human connection, but we want to be in control of our own lives. We don't want anybody else to tell us what we can and cannot do.
Mhm,
At least
mm,
that's how I think.
mm. As adults, yeah.
Yes.
We've all been kids too, and you're about as old as I am, and so that's kind of a thing. No,
Bless
right?
your heart to say that. No, I think I'm a lot older than you, so I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Very blessed. Okay. So as kids, and I've got a 14-year-old daughter now, she just turned 14, and so being told what to do isn't the greatest thing in the world. But she does have some agency in what she can and cannot do, of course. But
Hmm.
as adults, we want to grow into that, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of societal structure elements that kind of have an influence over us. But your point being real, more and more those conversations are happening.
Hmm.
However, they're happening in a very bad way. And so I just, earlier today had several different conversations with people
Hmm.
um, who have been impacted by suicide, whatever that looks like. And so, for one, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine over in the United Kingdom area, across the
Hmm.
Atlantic, uh, some time ago, a parent of the school that she's a head teacher,
Hmm.
which is a principal in the United States system. Uh, One of the parents died by suicide, right? And it's like, so how do you address this issue with school age children? And
Hmm.
nobody knows how. Recently, last year, and I'm just gonna make a call out. This may or may not be appropriate for this conversation, but schools, colleges in across the United States, we'll just call it that way. Schools and colleges across the United States are dealing with the issue at the collegiate level, suicide, for real.
Okay.
My close friends, colleagues, like you said, they all know somebody
Hmm.
who has died by suicide. How I no longer consider it, and because again, I'm not mentally ill. My life imploded. Suicide is real. We have to recognize it. It's not a mental illness, although
Hmm.
it can be addressed. It needs to be addressed to some degree under the psychiatric, medical system. Yes, I do
Hmm.
recognize that. So anybody who's watching and listening, this isn't a snippet against, professional services. Absolutely
Hmm.
need it. But if you were most effective, then the rate of suicide would be decreasing. And you say, well,
Hmm.
Dr. McNally, how can you even say that? Because the very fact is, the matter, it's increasing. Reportedly, not reportedly, the people that you meet, down the street, Sesame Street, who do we meet down the street?
Hmm.
People are suffering. People are hurting. People are
Hmm.
scared. People are frustrated. People are anxious,
Angry.
angry. Yeah.
Hmm.
And there's no, and if without a resolution, without some way of saying, give me hope,
Hmm.
give me some help, let me know that there's healing involved.
Hmm.
We take these situations and we take them as individuals because we think there's nobody out there.
Hmm.
And that burden becomes very real. That burden becomes very scary. That burden becomes overwhelming. And if you're strong enough, you're going to die by suicide. So, my
Hmm.
goal, because you mentioned it earlier, is to change the conversation. And I've been changing it one conversation at a time. Now, my impact is slow at this point, but the message needs to be out there.
Hmm.
If we don't change the conversation now, it just gets worse. And so,
Hmm.
my goal is to make sure that you have a space to talk about it, that you are free and safe to talk about it. Now, I'm not talking about crisis response. I'm
Hmm.
not your, your 1-800, which is 988 now, in case anybody in
Hmm.
the States realizes it's a 988 text or phone call. I am not your first responder. However, I'm a person who's been there and
Hmm.
recognizes the fear that goes along with it,
Hmm.
knows the stress that goes along with it,
Hmm.
and I can help. And I know people who can help. I know people who've written books. I know people who are coaches or therapists or pastors.
Mhm.
whatever your space is, that I know some really good people, including myself, who can help.
So you basically have a team that you've kind of are associated with, or you've created, or
I've
you
con-
can
I'm
go
connected
ahead.
with a lot of people. So
Mhm.
my since 2021, which was my LinkedIn connection, was 2,000. I'm now 8,000 strong, and I've got about 9 or 10,000 followers somewhere in that space. So I do know a whole lot more people than I did when I started all this. But I
Mhm.
do support a team of people. So I do support two grief coaches, one community app developer, and one nonprofit up here in Eastern Shore in Virginia called the Hope Institute that does address or provides mentoring and a program for younger people,
Mhm.
typically older teens and collegiate level adults. So, whatever your age, race, nationality, belief system, it doesn't really matter. It's impacting all of us. And I know people who can help. I know grief coaches in Canada, the UK,
Mhm.
western part of the state, eastern part of the state,
Mhm.
and I'm talking about the United States
I,
for your
I do have
audience.
a question about, because you were talking about like the ages that you have people, who could work with, adults, teenagers. How young? I mean, because like I said, I think that their kids are a lot more depressed than ever, and that suicide attempts and suicide is happening even at younger and younger ages. So, do you have somebody who deals with the younger, even preteen? Because I think that's a really scary time, especially for girls.
As of right now, I don't know anybody specifically who addresses that, and but I do know people who work in that space, and so I could easily give a shout out to a couple of
Hmm.
names. I probably won't at this point unless there's a need.
Hmm.
Who work with people, um, you know, teenage, preteens, younger than that,
Hmm.
both here in the States and across the Atlantic Ocean. And so, if those names or reference points need to be given, I could kind of give it to you
Hmm.
in show note form.
Hmm.
I just have to look them up.
Yeah, you can give me
Uh,
as many links as you've got or want to, and I'll just include all of that in the show notes so the listeners would be able to always have that to go to.
okay, and then please
Mhm.
include the hotline, the 988
Yeah.
hotline.
Okay.
But
So now,
go
what I
ahead.
really want to do is ask you about the irony. Yeah. Okay. And you know where I'm going. Is that here you are, you're getting your stuff together and, okay, you're, kind of on the path to healing and everything's going fairly well. And all of a sudden you have a heart attack. Where'd that come from? Out of the blue?
No, it's my fault.
Oh, it is.
Well, there's a backstory to everything, and so well, I'm going to go really quick backwards, really quick forward so people get an understanding. I said earlier, I'm an asthmatic. I have an asthma diagnosis, had it since growing up. Um, at the age of 14, I had a really bad asthma, 14 or 15, a really bad asthma attack. That was one of those pivotal moments in life.
Hmm.
For me, it was about the doctor said you could take medication daily or not. You'll still have asthma. I chose the and not or not part because what I wanted to do was figure out how to manage it myself. And so for me, that meant exercise.
Hmm.
Because at this point, and so I'm 54 now, so recognizing this is back in the 70s or 80s, um, meaning that we here in the States love doctors love being just dispensing medication is the way to go. It's how you heal the world. I wasn't too keen on it. What I wanted to do was find a way to do it myself.
Hmm.
The only thing I knew to do was run. How do you get your lungs healthy? You run, you know? So I started running. I literally started my first run was 3 seconds long, right? I always say that, the same day I put on my sneakers and I ran down the street for 3 seconds. But I was consistent.
Hmm.
3 seconds became six, became a minute, and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
That got me addicted to exercise. And so I thought the cure all to everything in my life was exercise. And so I've been exercising since that day.
Mm-hmm.
That includes aerobic and anaerobic, so weightlifting. Now, by structure, I am all 5'6" and maybe 145 pounds. And so I'm a tiny little guy. See, look at me. And this is kind of consistent with my, and this kind of sometimes plays on my ego. So I'm a guy. So I want to be, the big buff, guy and trying to do what I
Mm-hmm.
can with what I can work with. So for me, that meant, strength training, heavy lifting, still doing the aerobic stuff because I still got to
Mm-hmm.
keep my heart and lungs in good shape. What I found is scary. And so I was doing all this from 2021, 2022. So post suicide attempt, kind of staying on track with who I am naturally, but now wanting to kind of just gain size, strength. So heavy lifting, dietary changes mean lots of protein in the form of milk, whey, whatever that protein looked like.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't know what I was doing was I was destroying my kidneys, for one, because whatever blood test they do with the kidneys, they weren't looking too good. And so I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a doctor of education.
Mm-hmm.
Still love to eat whatever, so I wasn't too, keen on keeping salt low or, I still love my fried chicken. I live here in, Southern Virginia. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, love fried chicken.
Who
Anyway,
doesn't?
anyway, so October 15th, Sunday, 3 o'clock in the morning, I am on the floor in my bedroom and I am just in severe pain. So severe, I'm crying and I don't cry too often. I am crying. I'm crying on the floor in my own bedroom. And I stay on the floor for about 2 hours. I kind of know what's going on. You kind of, I mean, it's like, it's just hurting, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to admit it. This is that
Mm-hmm.
guy thing coming on. I don't want to admit that I'm having a heart attack. I don't want to say it out loud.
Mm-hmm. And if you
Talking,
wait long enough, maybe it'll just go away.
and it did. It
I
did. It
know,
so
I know.
did.
I
Oh
have a
my
lot of
gosh.
male tendencies, believe it or not, and I'd do the same thing. It's like if I just forget about it, ignore it, I'll be fine. It'll go away eventually.
After 2 hours, it subsided. So I went back to bed.
There you go.
And typically, from what my structure, what my routine was, when I woke up, I went out walking. I still walked for 5 miles. I came back, and after about 5 miles, it was like, this, something's not right. So I went back home, called my wife in and said, I think I'm having a heart attack.
Let me interrupt you just for 1 minute. I apologize for that. But while you were on the floor, writhing in pain and crying, where was your wife? Was she just sound asleep or was she thinking, hey, Keith, something might be wrong here?
She was sound asleep. Because I kept it.
Okay. So
I,
then
I was, I was
when
just,
you,
I was trying to make it through. I was really just trying to suck it up.
I admire that. I really do.
No, it's
But
stupid.
well, it is stupid. But on the other hand, then, okay. So when you've both finally, when she did wake up, did you say, hey, hun, I had this thing last night, little maybe indigestion, or did you just stuff it and not tell her?
No, I said I'm in a lot of pain. I think I'm
Okay.
having a heart attack. Because I Googled it because it's like all across the chest and the jaw. So when all this area is hurting, that's primary signs that it's a heart attack, especially in men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we go to the ER, right? And it's like, are you sure? They did all kind of tests. I've got like 6 different IVs in me. They're like pumping all kind of stuff in it. They're pulling all kind of blood out of me, and they're trying to find some legitimate reason for me to have a heart attack. There was nothing showing in the blood other than, I can tell them I'm in pain. Well, at this point, I'm in discomfort. Like I'm not on the floor now.
No, they had you strapped on a gurney.
Finally, some blood test. I mean, they were sucking all kind of blood out of me. Finally, some blood test that my count was like way where it shouldn't have been. And again, I can't give the description, but it's like, oh, okay. It finally, yeah, he's got a heart attack after like 2 hours of being on that gurney. And so I get this is my first and only ambulance ride ever to the hospital. Um, so yeah, I was in there for 4 days. My artery clogged, just shut down. They put a stent in it,
Mhm.
so I did that, have the operation. I've heard the term widowmaker. This wasn't a widowmaker, but
Mhm.
the whole medical team said you shouldn't be alive, um, especially since it took you 9 hours to get here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You shouldn't be alive. But that was kind of the second transformation, and so
Mhm.
that transformation was about really for me growing up, and maturing into what I was doing with my health, my body, my life wasn't working.
Mhm.
And so I learned a new way to eat. I learned, what appropriate dieting is. If dieting is a good word, I don't even think it's a good word.
Mhm.
What foods stay away from the salt. I don't need all that salt. But
Mhm.
more importantly, what my life looked like, or what I should be doing with my life in terms of exercise.
Mhm.
Um, I was training for bulk. I was training for mass and size.
Mhm.
And even in so doing, I ignored the obvious signs. The obvious signs, my body was talking to me. My
Mhm.
body was saying, this doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
It was telling me that this doesn't feel good. I mean, it looked good. I mean, I had this, the size that men typically want. It didn't feel good to my body. So what did I do? Um, I started flipping everything. So instead of doing high amounts of weight training, I minimized that, routined it so that I'm still healthy. I still have,
Mhm.
musculature that I want, but it increased my aerobic training. Start walking instead of like 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7 miles a day. And then I decided, well, I wrote a book, and you talked about it in my bio, Walking the Path, A Leader's Journey,
Mhm.
it's actually about a young man who takes a group of colleagues, his friends, and these are 17, 18-year-old kids. Um, it's a fictional story wrapped in leadership context. So it's not an academic book.
Mhm.
It's a practical application of really personal development and what it really means to be your own leader of self
Mhm.
and leading a small group of people, becoming vulnerable and learning how to talk and communicate and learning how to build trust and overcome obstacles and things like that.
Mhm.
So, leadership context within a fable. But in order for these people to figure out who they are in life, they had to cross over the mountain. So, they lived in this valley, surrounded by a mountain range.
Mhm.
So, this is where the mountain comes in. So, I decided one day that I'm going to take that book and make it my life.
Mhm.
And for me, because I live here in Virginia, that meant hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Of course it does.
So, and not just a small part of it. Hell, why don't you just go big? So it's a through hike. And so the Appalachian Trail is 2,194 miles, depending on who's counting. And every year there's a bunch of wannabe through hikers. And so I'm following a bunch of them on YouTube. They post daily or every other day or whatever. It's its own little community. Through hikers are their own little community. And so I want to be one of them. And not
Mhm.
because I want to be part of the community. Oh, that's pretty cool. But I'm really not at this point because I'm not even on the mountain yet. I really wanted to make a point that life has purpose. Um,
Mhm.
and for me, it was completely transformational, meaning that I had to transform my entire life, what I thought about it, what I do with it, and who I interact with. All
Mhm.
of those things are now intentional and purposeful.
Mhm.
So part of that is I want to do this. I want to raise awareness. I want to raise awareness for suicide. I want to change the conversation. This is just the activity to do it. My goal is to raise $1 million for me and a group of people who actually make an impact. And I
Mhm.
may never make it, probably not this year, but it will be my life's goal.
Mhm.
But it has changed my life. And so since I started training for the hike, early mid 2023. And so at the time of this recording, it's
Mhm.
April 1st, April Fool's 2024. Um, I carry a 30-pound pack
Mhm.
every day, Monday through Friday. I'm at the point where it's 12 plus miles a day. On the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, it's more. And these
Wow.
are continuous miles. So I don't
Mhm.
just do like 3 miles and sit down for a while or like an hour. This is a
Mhm.
12-mile hike. This is a
Mhm.
4-hour stretch of time. To give reference, I'm up at 2:30 in the morning
Mhm.
to hike those 12 miles. And like I said, on the weekends, it's longer. Diet has completely changed. My diet is completely different than what it was. And so I'm hiking for, the carbohydrates that I burn, the protein to sustain the muscle, to sustain the muscles, um, low sodium, all that kind of stuff. It's completely changed. In so doing, and this is what freaks my doctors out. In so doing, oh, and I didn't mention the blood pressure. So when I prior to the heart attack, my blood pressure was like 130 over 90. Like not not terribly bad, but it's on the high end of being not
Mhm.
good. It's like 104 over 72, right now. So it's like really, really pretty good,
Mhm.
if that's a term. Um, I have lost, obviously, if this is a video recording, I've lost tremendous amount of weight. I now weigh 145. I now weigh what I typically should as a normal
Mhm.
person, or
Mhm.
normally me. Um, my EKG is good. I don't
Mhm.
take many. I've never taken, other than the first 30 days post
Mhm.
hospital, I've never taken the blood thinners, whatever other medications. They
Mhm.
prescribed 4 of them. They're like really expensive. I could still die of a heart attack. That's not saying that it's not going to happen, but the likelihood of it happening isn't there. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
possibility because
Mhm.
my cardiologist just loves me because every time I go to make a doctor's visit, he says, everybody dies. Yeah.
Do you ever say including you?
No, because I don't want to piss him off, but
Okay, fair enough.
I do. The next time I go see him, I want to say, yes, but you could live with intentionality and purpose, and that's what I'm doing. He does know I'm training for the through hike. And so I asked
So,
him,
yeah, what does he
go
think
ahead. I'm
about
sorry, I'm
that?
rambling.
No, no, what does he think about that?
I tell him that, and he says, I know a guy. He's like, he knew this guy who did it like last year or 2 years ago, or he was an attorney and took he took a whole year off to train and
Wow.
then hike it. Not an attorney. What was he? An accountant, I think. He was an accountant.
Okay.
Um, and so I asked, do you want to join me? And he says, no. And it was just
Okay,
so
so when
funny.
what was his, from a medical standpoint and a health, and wellness standpoint, is he concerned or is he like, you go guy, I mean, to get back to be doing something like that is quite an accomplishment under any circumstances. But, given your history, some people might be like, "Oh, don't do that. That's a little too strenuous. You just go ahead and sit down, maybe do some chair aerobics, what
He never puts it that way. There's always the hint of the suggestion that I should be on my medications. Again, they always, Western medicine pushes that. I just tell him no. So that doesn't make him happy, but the blood pressure is good. So all of
Mhm.
the numbers are good. And so
Mhm.
that kind of silences his argument because right now
Mhm.
my numbers are good. My EKG tests, whatever,
Mhm.
my heart sounds good. It looks good from the test results.
Mhm.
Um, but
And
again,
you know what? Anyone can have a heart attack. I mean, it's just kind of like, a fact of life. And
yeah,
it just triggered a memory of when I was because I was a respiratory therapist for almost 20 years and then a physical therapist for 20 years. And when I was a respiratory, I know, I was a
it's
glutton
40
for
years
punishment. Huh?
cumulative.
It's
That's
40 years.
40. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in the
Okay.
medical field for 40 years. That's why I'm
Wow.
so crazy. But anyway, Ann's very tired. But there was a thoracic surgeon that I absolutely adored at, one of the hospitals I was working in. And I mean, he was just so charming and he was just so gracious and he would always, talk to me. And he was actually originally from Czechoslovakia, which is where my dad was from, and I mean, I just loved this man so much. There was something about him. and he went hiking, climbed a 14er. So do you know what a 14er is?
No, well,
We
can
have
you
several.
explain it to me?
We have quite a few of them here in Colorado. 14,000-foot peaks.
Oh my God.
And the one that is very, very popular that a lot of people, want to climb and conquer is called it's Long's Peak.
Okay.
That's the name of it. And and it's my husband actually did it once when he was probably 40, or maybe late 30s or early 40s. And it was like, God bless, have a great time. I'm not, yeah, I'm not going. And so anyhow, this guy went hiking up to, Long's Peak with his 12-year-old son, and he never made it down. He had a heart
Did it?
attack on the way down.
Oh,
This
and the
man was
son?
healthy. He was vibrant. He was, a surgeon. He just, I mean, and it was devastating. I mean, we were all just devastating because we lost
Yeah.
this man. And, you know, 14,000 feet. It's a long way to go. I actually did 3 of them in my life, but only summited once. And I told my husband, it's like, done. We are done. He goes, but look at the view. Isn't it spectacular? And I said, I can see this in a book. We're done. So,
Well, you just put me to shame because 2,200 miles now seems like nothing.
well, no, because I mean, it wasn't that many miles. It's not the mileage. It's just
It's
the elevation.
elevation, yeah.
It's the elevation.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, so, you got to do what works for you.
Well, I told my colleague that if I survive this, and my colleague's out in the West Coast, uh, you know what we're doing in 2026? I'm doing the Pacific Crest Trail, which is an additional 400 miles.
Oh, that we do have a Colorado trail as well.
Oh,
And I don't think any of the trail is 14,000 feet, but there is a
okay.
Colorado trail. So
So if I survive one, I could do two.
that's right. That's right. So, all righty. So now then, here you are, you're in great shape. You've got this incredible goal that you're working toward. You're raising money to raise awareness for suicide, prevention and education. And are you doing this trail with anybody else, or are you flying solo?
Um, People initially, said gung ho, I'll do a mile or two with you. I've not heard from them since, so I don't know. My intention is at this point is that I'm more than likely going to do this solo, and so that puts that kind of I had to re-strategize how I was going to do this, and so
Hmm.
at this point, considering just doing it as an individual, considering my dietary needs,
Hmm.
my intentions at this point is to so a year from now, so April
Hmm.
1st, kind of when it's kind of moving from cooler to a bit warmer in Georgia, because I'm going to start in Georgia and go north, um, and do it in 100 days. And so my goal is to at least start it April 1st and finish by July 4th holiday, kind of thing like that. So do it in a 100-day span. Physically, I can do it. I've already done an 18, 20-mile days hiking, but I've done it on flat land because I'm here in Eastern Virginia. I truthfully can't, I do believe I can push it to 22 miles on average a day to do it in 100 days. Because if you're looking at 2,200 miles, the math says you got to do at least 22 miles per day over in 100 days. Um, so now it's the planning part. So I've kind of in my head I can do it.
Hmm.
So logistically now it's how to get resupply on food, water, when
Hmm.
that needs to happen. And so I've actually purchased the map. I know there's other maps, but there's a footpath map of the Appalachian Trail,
Oh, nice. I see.
uh, um, by National Geographic. So shout out to National Geographic. So I got to study the map. I've got to talk to
Mhm.
some people about how to strategize the footpath now, not just I could do it. I could carry a
Mhm.
30-pound pack all day long.
Mhm.
Physically, I can do it. It's how to make sure that I'm alive doing it for the 100 days is a different
Hmm.
story. So that requires some planning. Now, I do have some colleagues who have said that at certain points, they can meet me to make sure that I'm doing one
Hmm.
physically okay, that I've got water and food resupplies as needed. But some other friends have said, so you're telling me you're not going to take a shower in 100 days? I'm thinking, really, I never even thought of that. But you're probably
Right?
right. I got to so, and so there's a whole lot of other logistical things because the more north you go, there's bears. There's bears along the trail, what I'm told. You're in backcountry, a lot of it. So I've got to plan for that. And so there's different ways of storing food and, with you.
And one of
And
those bear alarms or bear horns or whatever to
yeah,
scare them
the
off.
bear horn and the bear horn, bear spray. There's a bear, what they call a bear vault or a food canister with,
Hmm.
odorless food bags. You gotta be really conscientious about how you approach now. So again, this is about the planning part. How do you approach the actual hike? It's not just about being physically fit to do it. You
Right.
actually have to do it appropriately,
Right.
to get yourself across.
So even though you're doing it solo, my guess is that you're going to be running into a lot of people on the trail and, making friends and connections even with fellow hikers and maybe even, going certain distances together. Is that a possibility? Because I've heard that that's what happens oftentimes.
It's a possibility. And however, and I've even asked that to the people who are doing their through hike adventure now,
Hmm.
is that when they're doing their self film, when they're doing their selfie movies,
Hmm.
recordings, I don't see anybody. You really don't see anybody till you go off trail, go into town for your resupply, and then you either you stop in not a hotel, a hostel. Um,
Hmm.
Somebody's going to put you up for a night or two,
And you get a shower.
and you get a shower, and that's typically where you meet the people. But so since my intention is just to get it done, to do that
Hmm.
100
Hmm.
dollars 100-day stretch, more than likely I'm not going to see all the people that you I would expect. I mean, at the
Hmm.
start, yeah, and
Hmm.
probably at the end, yeah. Um,
Hmm.
but when I'm watching these videos, you know, one of them is this is pretty cool. His name is Michael McNally. So instead of MC, because my name is McNally,
Hmm.
McNally, is McNally.
Hmm.
And his YouTube channel. So this is a shout out to him, and we're not even friends. I suck at hiking, but he's all in. So that's his YouTube channel.
I think I
So
saw that.
you did did
I
you?
think I
He's
did as
doing
I
pretty
was.
good. He's got over 400 miles in, and he's got over 30, just about 30 plus days in. Um, he's doing pretty good. He's hiking with his dog, Leo the
Uh-huh.
hiking dog. Yeah.
That's
So
really
he's
that's so funny because I somebody told me, several guests ago, maybe a year or so ago, that she was, embracing, trying to reinvent herself, and she decided that she was going to try new things. And she tried a couple of new things like rock climbing, and she was so excited to try it. She goes, and I really sucked at it. And she says, but it didn't matter because I was having fun. I was laughing. I looked like an idiot. So it's like, if you're going to suck at something, just embrace it.
I need to live these 100 days on the trail, so I can't necessarily suck at it. I suck at camping. I don't suck at
Mm,
hiking. I'm pretty good
mm.
at hiking. Um, it's the whole setting up the tent part that kind of,
It's the sleeping in the dirt part that just, ooh.
well, I don't know if we could talk about this, because I've got to poop in the woods too. So it's like,
Well, that did cross my mind. Hmm.
so you have to carry it, the shovel or this trowel, and you've got to carry, wipes.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that sounds just delightful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Well, and so now, so you're not leaving until April 1st of next year. Per-
I want to be on day one. I need to leave here the end part of March
Okay.
so and get to Georgia and then get a taxi up to the starting point, probably stay overnight at the hotel and then
Get a
bright and early, have some
get a
breakfast and get
taxi
on the
up to the
trail.
starting point. You don't want to walk
Yeah.
up to the starting point?
Well, climbing up the mountain is another thing. I want to save all my energy for the trail.
Smart.
I
Smart.
yeah.
So you have to promise me that you will come back and when you're done and you successfully complete this, so you can come on the show and share your experiences and tell us the story of how everything went.
So a year from now, a year plus 100 days,
Yes, a year and 100 days. As a
you
matter of
got
fact,
it.
once I'll just check out my calendar and mark off the date, so I'll know.
July 5th.
So you already did.
Well, I told you I want to be done by July 4th, and so
Oh, yeah.
at least by July 10th, we'll have another conversation
Hmm.
next year.
Hmm. That's really funny. So, Keith, do you have any specific little pearls of wisdom that you would like to share with the listeners based on some of the things that we've talked about, as far as, everything that you've been through? And to listen to you talk, having these wonderful conversations, again, you're so positive, you're so upbeat, you are really sharing stories that lift people up and give them hope. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
When I started on my healing journey, so I kept everything inside.
Mm,
I wasn't sure how to have those conversations about me.
mhm,
And that's where people are probably going to be at if they've either made the attempt or know somebody who has. They're going to be confused,
mhm,
right? They're not going to know what to think, what to feel. They're going to be thinking all kind of thoughts. They're going to be feeling all kind of emotions, and that's going to be okay. The thing is, they don't know that's going to be okay. It just is. It's normal. What I did is to allow other people to share their story with me. Thus,
mhm,
the Question Guy podcast, Coach's Corner, because a lot of people, what people did was they took their own personal journey and became a coach from it. I don't know if they're overly successful. They like to talk about success, but coaching is difficult. There's so many
mhm,
people out there who are quote unquote coaches. And so grabbing your niche clientele
mhm,
is a challenge. But the story behind this is I allowed people to share their stories with me. And whether it's something I can do innately or simply because I intentionally created that space, and that space is this space, this virtual space.
mhm,
They were more than willing to share their stories with me.
mhm,
There was a sense of safety I created, a
mhm,
sense of vulnerability that I created, and that I continue to maintain. If you're scared to share your story, let other people share their stories with you first, and recognize that in doing so, you're not alone.
mhm,
Let people who are comfortable telling their story share it with you. Share their fears, share their anxieties, share their thoughts of wanting to die or feeling completely empty, lonely. And then once you hear enough stories, you're probably then ready to tell your own story. And
mhm,
that's really where the power comes in. So and then you could open up and share your story for the first time with whomever. It could be somebody that you know. It could be a perfect stranger. It could be you who is willing to
mhm,
have them on. You're willing to have them on your show.
mhm,
But it's at that point that they become strong.
mhm,
It's at that point that they recognize their own value. And it's at that
mhm,
point they recognize their own importance and they can make the steps forward in life
mhm.
that they need to to make life worth living again.
Excellent. So, where can people find you? How can they connect with you, get a hold of you, donate to your cause? Because this is a fundraising campaign for you, to collect money to help with the suicide prevention and education. So, give us some of the links. They're going to be in the show notes forever and ever, but I really like for the guest to be able to articulate it because it makes it a lot more personal.
Sure. The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn.
Mhm,
So Dr. Keith McNally, DrKeith. That is the primary way. I'm there every day almost, except for Saturdays. I do have a website, drkeithmcnally.com. Um, it's kind of there for show. It kind of tells you who I am, what I'm doing. That's going to be rebranded a bit because I'm trying to move into this position of being a speaker. I think I told you offline.
Mhm,
I want to get on. My goal is to be on the TEDx stage this
mhm,
year. And then I'm connected with some other people who said if you want to be a speaker, you have to have a speaker page or a speaker landing page. So
mhm,
that needs to be rebranded a bit because right now it tells a piece of everything, the book and all. So it's not speaker friendly. Speaker, for those who book speakers. Primarily, you want to listen to the Envision Speakers Series.
mhm,
So envisionspeakers.com. Um, that's where you'll find a lot of my activity
mhm,
specifically for social change and specifically addressing the issue of suicide.
mhm,
Uh, and then, of course, walkingthepath.net.
mhm,
And so, Walking the Path will also be rebranded, but the website is walkingthepath.net, and that is my uh, trail to
mhm,
transformation, hiking for hope and healing.
mhm,
So the link to the GoFundMe is on there.
mhm,
I also have an affiliate link to buy
mhm,
coffee. So I'm associate with the Coffee Platoon. So the
mhm,
coffeeplatoon.com. And I've
mhm,
got a specific an affiliate link that if you buy a 12 pound, that's a lot. I think a $12 purchase of coffee in the contiguous states. So, and I'm
uh,
pretty much sure the contiguous states and not Alaska and Hawaii because it may cost extra to ship it there. So anyway, $12. Well, let me back up. The Coffee Platoon was established. It's a 501c3 up in New Jersey,
oh, mhm,
established by a veteran, Air Force veteran. Um, I said earlier that I'm a combat veteran, a Marine Corps combat veteran. What he did was establish a nonprofit to help veterans find employment post service,
mhm,
and so much needed service. But what he's allowed to do is have people, whether you're a for-profit, nonprofit, or an individual who's raising money for a cause, um, to join in that program. So basically, for every $12 purchase, I get four, he gets four, and the rest goes to shipping. And so it's really
mm,
delicious coffee. If you're not into coffee, it's also hot chocolate. But it's military rated, and so for those who are stronger in terms of their coffee, the dark roast, or you can buy Marine Corps coffee, and
mhm, mhm.
and so there's Army and Air Force and Navy coffee too. But it's all
Oh,
coffee.
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Keith, this has been just amazing. I've just loved this conversation. And, I love having you on the show. And it's really been very enlightening in a lot of ways and entertaining.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. What an incredible conversation. Keith is such an amazing person. Oh, that's one other thing. I almost forgot that as you do your trail, will you be recording and posting your journey on YouTube or?
So the intention, of course, is yeah, that's kind of the modern day thing is you got social media present. So I'll be,
Mhm,
at the very least bringing my phone. If I've raised enough money to kind of buy a better piece of equipment, I will. The game plan is to make this as social media friendly as possible. So I do have
mhm,
connections in the media world. So part of this initially, if there was enough money to do so, was to make it a big deal. So be on radio, be on TV, local,
mhm, mhm,
all the way up the trail. I don't know if that's going to be a thing at this point,
mhm.
because I need to connect with the right people at the right time and
Right,
have those right
right.
conversations to say, hey, can you put me on your
Yeah,
TV
right.
show when I reach this point on the trail? I don't know if that's going to happen. It may not. I'm still going to walk it.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Because I know I've seen a couple of videos. I don't know if they were on YouTube or Instagram of you trying out the hiking shoes that you're gonna, buy or
YouTube,
wear and
yeah. And
breaking.
so I started doing my planning stuff, and so the shirts that I wear, pants that I wear, eh, the hiking boots, and because most people who do the through hike or even avid hikers will do the low, and this is just advertisement, do the low cut shoe. But I'm a combat veteran, and so I've been wearing boots basically since I was 18. I'm wearing boots now, so I'm wearing construction. They're just very comfortable. So I wear high top hiking boots rather than low cut walking shoes or hiking shoes for trail or street walking. And so
Mhm,
it's just a comfortable fit for me.
mhm.
Soon I'll be doing video content on the foods that I've got to eat.
Mm.
Basically, the low sodium. Even though they say that once you're up there, you know, you have to increase your salt intake because you have to increase or maintain, your
Hydration,
yeah. I don't know.
blood
Um,
volume.
I don't know because these people are. I don't know. I don't know. To be quite honest, and I say that because I don't want to risk a heart attack on the trail. So
No.
what I have to do, it has to be very calculated.
Hmm.
So I am thinking maybe not, I've seen people will eat candy bars every day for breakfast. Well, what the hell? I don't know if that's appropriate or not. And then all of these dehydrated foods, that they make specifically for hiking, and especially for endurance athletes, are very, very high in sodium. I mean, not just they're like your frozen foods at the grocery store. They're so high in sodium that what do you do
Hmm.
with that? I don't think that that's going to be the way to go to maintain what I've got to do. I think still, um, again, water, appropriate food intake,
Hmm.
and then, see what happens.
Well, I have got all the confidence and all the faith in the world that you are going to do a spectacular job. And I am so looking forward to following you on the trail in the comfort of my own home as I watch you do all of this. So it'll be really fun.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening once again. And do go to Keith's website, check out his YouTube channel, check out his podcasts and all of the recordings that he has. If you know of somebody who needs help, please connect with him, contact him. And he has like he said, a complete, very extensive amount of resources that he can refer people to. So, remember to stay safe, take care of yourself, and listen to your body. And if you do need help, reach out because there's always somebody who can help you. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.